Brandon Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Corsby. In Hemsby and Great Yarmouth, we have £80 million worth of tourism economy that is at risk through the shoreline management issues. Tourism in Great Yarmouth is worth around £500 million a year, and it is, as my honourable friend has mentioned, a huge issue when we're looking at a coastline that is deteriorating. And I congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Suffolk Coastal, who is, for getting this debate and being such a fantastic advocate for her constituency and coastal erosion issues in general. When we had the Minister visit our coastline, and again I join my honourable friend for congratulating the Minister for coming up so quickly, what was indicative and very clear was the number of advisors that he had to have with him from Natural England, the Environment Agency and a range of other quangos and areas that I can't begin to remember the acronyms for, actually highlighted the problem that residents have in trying to understand what they can do and what they can't do. Because for every part of the coastline, there's either a different agency or ownership behind it and a different body to go to, from the local authorities to central government to the various quangos that have been mentioned. In Hemsby, we have got an issue where tourism is a great concern because an awful lot of the properties there have been touched on by my honourable friend, the member for Malden, is the mobile homes and what are classed as temporary and therefore not counted as part of the cost-benefit analysis. And the value of those goes to tens and tens of millions of pounds that simply are not counted when put against, and I appreciate the Waterville recommendation, the comment we had is the lifespan of terns, which are phenomenally interesting birds, but really I'm struggling to see how they match up to a tourism industry of around £80 million. We've got an area of special scientific interest in Winterton that has been eroded dramatically over the last 10 years and is continuing to erode to the point that properties and commercial property there is at risk, as well as a Coast Watch tower. In Hopton, we have a coastline that's dramatically moved, as residents see it, in the last few years. And the SNP's weakness in terms of round 2 was highlighted there, where residents who have bought properties under Hold the Line were now being reassessed as no active intervention. Now, what I have to say, my experience has been good with the SNP, is in Great Yarmouth at least, the authorities have listened and they have reacted to that and are changing the final recommendation to get it back to managed retreat. Because what that does potentially allow is the private individuals and commercial companies in Hopton, such as Potters and Haven people, to start looking at making investments. But to do that, they need to be able to put forward a full business plan. And I'll come back to this. I just want to touch on a couple of local issues before I briefly talk about the bigger picture. And in Scratby, we've got a Pathfinder scheme, a scheme that many of the residents in Scratby and myself, I have to say, were very, very wary of and suspicious of on the basis it did feel very much like a government at the time simply trying to buy people off for a year without actually doing anything, because the money that's been put into Pathfinder, certainly in Scratby, would have gone a long way to finishing some of the flood defences they've been working so hard for so long. And what the people in Scratby have said to me, and I've met with them recently, they came to our APPG for coastal erosion, is they want the freedom to be able to do something for themselves. And they're a perfect transition straight into the bigger issue. When we're looking at the shoreline management plans, as has been touched on, we look at issues around 50 years and 100 years, and I remember the previous member for Suffolk Coastal actually made the point, which I still has stuck with me and I think is a very relevant point, is that actually the companies and some of the private individuals and commercial bodies affected, particularly in terms of tourism, need to be able to see that they can protect that coastline and make an investment that gives them a business plan of 20 to 30 years, and they need that. But we don't really need anything too much beyond that, because if we think about what is possible now, as opposed to what was possible and what we knew and understood 20 years ago, and in some cases 5 years and 10 years ago, then once we get beyond that, we're kind of putting our fingers in the wind and guessing. Our technology moves, our understanding moves, and therefore the 100-year plans, to be honest, become somewhat redundant. We should be focusing on what we can do in the next 5 to 20 and 30 years. And the 20 to 30 years, with a clear understanding this is about allowing private individuals and businesses to have a business case to protect their shoreline. And there is an issue around education, as has already been mentioned by one of my honourable friends. We have had a similar issue in Great Yarmouth, where residents in Scratby, who are directly affected by the coastal erosion, obviously care passionately about it and are working hard on it and have put an awful lot of resource and their own time into it. There are residents who live just 1 or 2 roads back from the coastline, let alone a mile inshore, who knew nothing about this until a big consultation was done. And residents in Great Yarmouth who don't live on the coastline, that really don't understand the big impact this could have on them going down the line. And there is an education, because this will have an impact. If we don't do something in the near future to protect those coastlines, that coastline will come backwards anyway. It will have an impact on farming. And I know the NFU in Norfolk have been frustrated at their lack of involvement and ability to understand, because of the complexity of the different organisations involved, how they can feed into that. Because, and I know my honourable friend, the member for Boston Skegness, has real concerns because of the farming problems and the way that the salt water can impact on the land. And in Great Yarmouth, we produce much of the potatoes that have already been mentioned that some of us get to enjoy on a regular basis. And it's also the tourism side for things like the Norfolk Broads. The Broads Authority is already finding the salt water levels in the water rising because of the coastal erosion. So there is a huge impact that we probably need to do a better job of educating all of our residents about. And there is a huge value to doing something about this, not just in terms of property, but in peace of mind going forward as well. But we have to be very clear on that time frame. We also have to be honest and realistic about what the government can afford to do. I fully understand that the government is not in a position where it could do what it would assume and hope it would like to do, which is protect every inch of coastline around our country. I think residents understand it, certainly those involved. In my experience across Great Yarmouth, and at a meeting we had across from Suffolk Coastal, including Waveney, Great Yarmouth and North Norfolk representatives, with the Minister, understood that there was a financial constraint and therefore some tough decisions that have to be made. But yes, of course.
I should declare an interest, first of all, in that I have an Environment Agency blue blob in my back garden and live about 20 feet above sea level. Part of Redcar is actually below sea level. I agree with everything that's been said so far, and I understand the financial constraints. One thing I hope is that we don't allow any of this current debate and uncertainty to interfere with any schemes that are already about to take place, in particular the new sea wall in the town where I live. So I just hope the new government doesn't decide to pull the funding on everything and take another number of years to decide what to do.
Brandon Lewis.
I thank my honourable friend for the intervention. I think his point is very well made. And one of the problems with the whole structure of the SMPs is for many people, there's come to be a view that the SMP has become about nothing more than something that planning departments can do a tick box process on. And we do need to move beyond that. And that's where I think the issue of finance is important, because there has been a concern with some authorities that the Shoreline Management Plan must be something they can afford to do and can see a way that they can be responsible for because they feel responsible to their residents. When in fact, actually what we should be looking at is a plan that allows residents and communities and commercial organisations the ability to protect shoreline as much as the government does. And that's where I think the big change could be. And my honourable friend, the member for North Norfolk, who I've worked as an honourable friend, the member for Suffolk Coast, has worked with quite closely on this issue, has been talking for some time about a community solidarity fund. It's something I would recommend the Ministry, if it's not already, to look very closely at, to allow local authorities, potentially through the localism bill, this could be possible, the new bill, to look at allowing areas to actually start to raise their own funds. I know the residents in Scrapby themselves have already talked to me about a scheme and an idea they've got, that if they had the freedom to do, they could actually go forward to raise the funds, to bring the finance in that would allow them to move forward and finance some of the work that they want to do, that they believe they need to do, and that even the Pathfinder scheme is likely to show still being the best result for Scrapby. But we're also being aware that this has an impact across the coastline, which is why some form of community fund, working on the back of the Pathfinder work done in North Norfolk around the Sound and Leaseback scheme, but a community-based fund that isn't there for an impact on the government, but is there for local people to take a view on whether they want it through a referendum, and local people therefore to play their part in, and local businesses and organisations to be part of, and local authorities to be able to fund into with land deals and things like that, actually could start making some of these opportunities possible. And I think actually the main message I would like to get across to Ministry, and I have to say that the Minister, when he came to Great Yarmouth, did respond very positively, so I was pleased to see, is that actually in terms of coastal erosion, yes, we would like to see the government protect everything, but actually most importantly to the residents affected by this is the freedom to get through the bureaucracy that is absolutely overwhelming at the moment, to allow them to become more responsible for their own future and to have some control over their own destiny and the ability to run with it. And if it wasn't for the way that some of our forebearers were able to facilitate some of the coastal erosion, some of us wouldn't be representing the constituencies we do today. And we, therefore, I think, have a huge duty to free up the system, at the very least, to make sure that we're able to represent those constituencies as they are now in the years to come.
Yeah.